Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you have never checked out our program before, first of all, I'm so glad you found us. We are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. We have a guest with us today on the studio line. I have Shaman Isis. Shaman, so glad you are here.
Thank you so much, Billy, for having me. I'm very excited about being on the show.
Awesome. Well, here again, it's a mutual feeling. Glad you are here. Shaman has an interesting story. We're going to talk a little bit about that. She is a trauma survivor. She is a mental wellness advocate, and she is an educator. And she's the author of the book, Unleash the Empress. Central to her message is that people can come to terms with their trauma and mental wellness challenges and find the courage within themselves to heal and build a life that they will love. And I'm pretty sure that's kind of a universal thing. Everybody wants a good life, right? I mean, you only get one. So everybody wants a good life. Wouldn't you agree on that? Or at least they say they do.
Yes, they do. And I think that's what that whole pursuit of happiness is, when in fact happiness is a fleeting emotion, and what we need to pursue is mind, body, and soul harmony, which allows you to be happier more frequently.
Yes, it's much more deep rooted. It's a part of your lifestyle at that point. It's not like just being happy because you got a birthday cake, it's happy because it's part of your lifestyle to be stable and have that balance in your life. Shaman grew up in care and endured a shocking list of traumas that had her steeped in shame and depression. She felt at times that her future looked bleak, but it wasn't. And through courage, she found freedom. That is a very important message, no matter what you're going through. And sometimes we can go through some bad things, and sometimes what's at the end of the tunnel may not be what you wanted exactly, but a better life is possible. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes.
I wasted, I don't want to say wasted, it's not really true, because your path is the path. You go on it so that you can evolve to where you are when you finally get healthy. But I did spend a lot of years pursuing the wrong things. It didn't feed me and didn't create a stable and wonderful foundation for mental wellness and blossoming. And I think that's sort of what the external world focuses on, instead of on the things that really genuinely matter.
Let's talk about your name. Let's break that down a little bit. Let's start with Shaman. What exactly does that mean?
Well, I am a shaman, and shamanism is something I think a lot of people find confusing. No, I'm not off doing drugs all the time. I don't know why people think that shamans are. I've gotten that feedback from some people, and I'm like, no, that herbalism is part of what shamans do, but no, that's not part of it. Shaman is historically, because they're over 10,000 years old, and they can be found in cultures all over the world since the dawn of time. They are the community healer, helper, advisor, supporter of people in need, and at various points in their life, whether it's struggling with their marriage or struggling with their own self-esteem and self-love, or whether they're actually sick and need some natural remedies. And so that is what a shaman is about, and that's what I do now, is help other people learn to have the best life possible through shamanism.
I really like the concept of a healer. And one of the things that I remember from childhood, and most of us who grew up, I don't want to say, I'll speak for myself. I don't know what era you're from. I'm not going to have you give away your age, but I kind of grew up in the 70s, and that was kind of like the tail end of the neighborhoods, where everybody had, several blocks that all the kids played in, and everybody knew each other, and they helped each other with fixing things around the house or whatever. And there was always one parent that stood out. That this was the person that, when you got a bad splinter in your finger, or if you fell down and you skinned your knee on your bike, whatever, there was always somebody who could make you feel better in those days. And did you always feel that you had that? Were you one of those people that always feel that you had that innate ability?
Absolutely. My first life memory is actually being woken up in my sleep as a baby, knowing that my mother needed help. She was very sick, and I had a dream about it. And I came awake, and I climbed out of my crib and I went and found her. So, helping people in times of crisis is apparently my calling. It just took me a few decades to get back around to it. As you and I have discussed in the past, I grew up in an orphanage, and so from a very young age, I saw that there was something about the way that I touched people verbally and physically that allowed them to feel better. I could feel as an intuitive empath the relief that
Hmm.
working with other people and helping other people gave them, and I started to understand that there's a gift in that.
Yeah.
It just took me a little. So I took the circuitous route to being a healer.
Yeah. I believe it is a gift. Just like a lot of people have the ability to sing or do this, that, or the other thing. There's just some people that are natural born healers. The second part of your name, Isis.
Yes.
Does that have any type of meaning?
Yes, it does. When I was very young, I had visions of Egypt and the goddess Isis in particular. And so when I was talking to my spirit guides about the fact that I was finally going to pick up the mantle of shamanism, what my name should be, and that is what they spoke to me and said, it should be Shaman Isis. And so that was what I went with.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love the name Shaman Isis. Where were you? I know you have quite the history of moving around a lot, but when people ask you the basic question, "Where are you from?" What do you tell them?
Tennessee, the South, originally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tennessee. Tell us just a little about you mentioned the orphanages. What were your early days like? What were what we call your formative years? What were those like for you?
They were actually fascinating. I had this strange mixture of the strict religious, nuns and an orphanage. But while they were busy praying and doing things that nuns do, gardening, things like
Yeah.
that, I would race out of St. Peter's Orphanage, which looks like this massive old castle, and I would run around Memphis and have the most extraordinary adventures. I mean, I free ran with other children. I learned all about music. And I was right around the corner from Graceland. And
Oh,
so it was a strange mixture of these extremes that, frankly, I now have great fond memories of. Of course, there
yeah,
were traumatic experiences, but, with those traumatic experiences also came these extraordinary moments.
yeah. You mentioned some of the traumas. I certainly wouldn't, and I'm sure the audience doesn't either. Expect a lot of details, but just to give the audience some idea of what you're talking about when you talk about some of the things that so negatively impacted you. How would you describe some of those things that happened to you, just to give the audience an idea of what you went through?
Uh, I think the thing that, not only being dropped off at an orphanage at a very young age, not being allowed to see my sister, and see some of the things that I saw in the orphanage. The thing that was the most, I think, traumatic for me was when I was 13, and I had there's these 7 things that you go through to be a shaman, and I had all of them happening that year. But that year, I had multiple instances. I fell off a roof, off the 3rd story, and ended up getting caught by someone.
Oh
Uh,
man.
I avoided getting killed in a car accident at the last second by knowing for some reason not to get in the back of it. And that car accident made the cover of the newspaper. And my mother got really upset with me because of I was being a wild child. And long story short, I ended up getting sent to juvenile prison at 13 for running away from home, and then was made a ward of the state, and then adopted by a man that he stalked the women of my family for years and years, and terrorized me. He spied on me through peepholes all through high school. And so I had to go to high school acting like this, I'm a normal person who lives with people who have a different name than me. And, the man that I'm with acts like he's my boyfriend and not my a father figure. And so when I got the chance to run and start all over, I didn't want anyone to know those things. I was very ashamed of everything that had happened before I left and ran away to first California and then New York. I just thought if I go be a big executive and get super successful in a field that I would learn how to be happy, but your secrets keep you sick.
Yeah.
That's what I learned
That's
the
a
hard way.
that's an interesting statement. Your secrets keep you sick.
They
That
certainly
is,
did me, you know.
yeah. I'm not sure I've heard it put that way before, but I probably should have. That's a great statement. Now you
Yeah.
talk about the different types of trauma,
Mhm.
and what I have here in your notes are acute, chronic, and complex. Do you want to just briefly describe the differences there?
Yeah, the differences are a matter of instances and the difference within those instances. So you can have a traumatic experience, and I want to be very clear: trauma is relative to your experience. You can have one experience that can completely devastate you. You do not need to have a series of traumas. It's not a contest or a race. It really is the individual's life experience that dictates how they will deal with it. You can have a series of experiences that are very similar, like growing up with an abusive parent. And you can have a series of traumatic experiences that are not connected to each other, which is the case with myself. I have complex PTSD, or did, for a really long time. And that's because of the complexity of the confusing and different types of trauma that I experienced. But again, regardless of where you fall within that, it only takes one that becomes unhealed, that can debilitate someone and put them in an unhealthy place mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally.
Yeah. You talk about that shame, and that's something that as a mental health advocate I hear quite often. A lot of times when it comes to different types of assaults that people go through, or whether it be mental illness or whether it be some sort of addiction, they feel that they're going to be judged. They feel that they are going to be perceived as weak. And this is a very dangerous stigma because it prevents people from taking action. And if you fell down, this is the analogy I always use, and you badly cut your arm and you were bleeding, you wouldn't. So I'm not going to go to the emergency room because I'm bleeding and it's embarrassing to bleed. Of course, you're going to go and get yourself taken care of. And when you're hurting emotionally, it's very important to reach out for help. Um, Reaching out for help isn't that easy. A lot of times, not only do people feel shame, but they feel that it's going to be impossible to heal. And you talk about that too. Why does it feel like it's impossible, that it's never going to get any better?
Yeah. Well, the whole idea of shame is steeped in fear and anxiety and unhealthy relationship with yourself and boundaries with other people. One of the reasons why shame works so well is because people do, and this is a truth that a lot of people won't say, people do leave your life when you make mistakes. I'm here to tell you that because I made several mistakes, and I watched as people that were supposed to love and care for me changed their behavior because they weren't benefiting from the relationship with me in the way that they had in the past. And so, yes, there is truth. You will lose people when you make mistakes, but those people were lost to you already. And so you're giving away the power of turning your secrets into your superpower by allowing other people, the potential for other people to learn the truth about you and look at you less than they did before, when frankly they should actually be looking at you with more respect for your ability to be honest and honest with yourself and address your issues and tackle the beast. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with shame, is that people don't understand that if you're living in shame, it's because you are giving your power to people that do not necessarily love you enough to stay in your life when you do make mistakes. And you know what? You come to a place in life where you realize that you need to love you, and the people who are going to stay are going to stay, and the people who are going to leave are going to leave. And that you take those things that have those mistakes you made, those things that you gave so much power to, because I spent decades giving power to mistakes that some of them I had nothing to do with. And then when I did make mistakes myself, I allowed the fear of other people finding out about them to control my choices for over a decade. And I was miserable and 80 pounds overweight and completely unhappy. I couldn't even look myself in the mirror. And one day I realized, you know what? The people, I just don't care anymore. These are people, either they're going to stay, the people who are here, and they're going to love me, or they're going to leave. And
Yeah.
I'm going to turn what's happened to me into an opportunity to share things that I learned the hard way with other people, because that's the only way that I can turn the things that have occurred in my life into something beautiful.
Yeah.
And anyone can do that.
Yes. I think that's a great message. No matter what you're going through, things can be better. Depending on how bad it is, sometimes things can't be 100% wonderful, but you can make things better and you can live a better life. And what we always say in the recovery community is recovery is possible. And recovery looks different for some people than others, but it is a better life. And I think that's just an absolutely fabulous message.
Yeah. Be
Being that I
shameless, shameless, be shameless with your
That's a
mistakes.
Yeah, there you go. And if anything, I've known a lot of people that say they've let it turn the other way and actually empowered them. That they speak about it so freely now to help others that it actually makes them feel better about themselves and about what they're doing for other people. So that's very important. You mentioned that how to know when it's time to heal, and that's a common question that I deal with a lot of my interviews and people that deal with my quote unquote day job, because so many times that moment comes when you've hit rock bottom. And for a lot of people, they say that was I had nowhere else to go. Um, is there a way before things become totally unraveled? The analogy that we often use: do you really have to wait for the elevator to go to the bottom floor before you start to go up? Is there a way you can stop that and spare yourself some agony? How do you know when it's time to heal?
When you no longer look forward to life, when you dread Monday mornings, when you lose your excitement and zest for the life you've created for yourself, it's time to take a long, hard look at the life you're living, because we're meant to love life. We're meant to enjoy life. We're meant to laugh and giggle and remain childlike in our joy and excitement about living. And when we lose that, that's when we have gone in the wrong direction, and it's time to
Yeah,
stop and turn back around and find that child that loves life within us again.
yeah.
Yeah. That
That's
to me,
that.
that's the sign. You don't have to wait until it all implodes.
Yes, and please don't. There's never a better time than right now to ask for help. You talk about a support network, and that can be such an important thing. And that kind of comes back to people and places and things. It's something that we talk about in the recovery community quite a bit. If
Yeah.
you're always around the same people and always around the same places, you're going to be doing the same things. How important is a good support network, and how do you go about building one?
I think you start by taking a long, hard look at the people, places, and things, and that's for people who aren't necessarily in the program or know the language. And starting first, you have to make a decision that you want to change your life, and you want to change what is happening in your life experience. And that is happening because of the habits and patterns that you have, and your habits and patterns involve the people that you allow around you. And when you make a decision to change that and seek out a better life for yourself, the minute that you start to express that to people who are unhealthy for you, they will back away, and that allows space for you to start to build and draw in the people that will be supportive of your growth. And that's about getting yourself out there and around environments that draw people who are working on themselves, who are living in a healthier state of being, and can help support you in your growth. So it starts with you making that decision. It starts with you communicating it, and then it starts by you exposing yourself to people who are going to help you level up your game.
Yeah, absolutely. A very close component of that is learning how to trust yourself. And ultimately, we all have to own our own decisions. We can say that, he made me do it, but as kids often do. But when it comes right down to it, we have to own our own decisions and we have to stand by them. And if you've made a lot of mistakes, it's very hard to trust your intuition. It's very hard to trust your inner voice. How do you go about rebuilding that?
Well, I think that goes back to self-love and self-worth. When you genuinely and authentically love yourself, and that's something you have to really work on, uh, you start to create external expectations that will draw in better for you. It will just happen because because you're living in a place that's healthy for yourself, and you're making choices that are going to lead to better things for yourself. So you start to become more discriminating. When you love yourself, you start to have much higher expectations for how the world is going to treat you and what you're going to draw into yourself. And you will
Yeah.
draw in better by loving yourself. That's how frequency and energy works.
Great advice. You have to be at peace with yourself. And as they say, know who you are. That's kind of a line that kind of came out of the 60s and 70s. I have to find myself, but it's true, right? You gotta, yeah, you gotta know yourself. Such great content. You're on a number of social media networks. We'll kind of go through them here in a moment, but can you talk a little bit about what's central to your message when people find you online? What can they expect? What is your, as we say in the marketing business, what's your hook? I know it has to do with positivity and
Mhm.
healing. Do you want to talk a little bit about the message that you provide?
Yes, I teach people, educate people about the spiritual practices, the mindfulness practices that lead to a blissful life. And I use the mistakes that I made and the lessons that I learned the hard way to help them understand that anyone and everyone is capable of starting over at any time they want to. They just have to make that decision. And I use those stories to give people something to identify with, so they can see themselves in the experiences and challenges that I went through, and hopefully learn that lesson without as much delay as I had.
Yeah. And it sounds like a cliche and just something that you're supposed to say in some positive clichéic way, but it is never too late. I have friends that are well into their 60s and 70s who tell me they're happier now than they have ever been because they found that little secret. They
Mhm.
found that little key to happiness, and it's never too late. You are on TikTok, and you
Mhm.
are at Shaman Isis on TikTok, and you have quite the following there. I got to say, very impressive following there. What kind of things do you do on TikTok? I have a feeling you're not dancing necessarily.
No, no,
Um,
I did do a couple dancing videos, I must
that's probably
confess.
one of the misconceptions when people when I mention TikTok to people, I'm not going to be dancing on there. And the other thing is they're or doing the crazy gag pratfalls and things like that. And there's a lot of that on there, and there's nothing wrong with that. And by the way, I got to say, there's some talented people on there. There's people
Oh,
on there that
very. Yeah.
yeah, that can sing and dance better than established entertainers. I mean,
Oh,
they're fantastic.
certainly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's other places, there's other types of content on TikTok.
Hmm.
What is
Spiritual content is huge on TikTok. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you want
got
to talk?
30 billion views.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how have you used TikTok?
Yeah, I love to use TikTok live because
Live.
I
Okay.
am an intuitive empath that listens to my spirit guides. So I get messages and visions and prophetic dreams, things like that. I base my content on what I'm being synchronicities and things that I'm being told in the moment. So for me, TikTok Live is really great. And that's one of the main ways in which I built the people that follow my content. But there's a lot of wonderful spiritual content on TikTok. Once you get into the algorithm and you only like things that you really like, it really learns very quickly. So it's a great resource. I think it's certainly better than a lot of mass media, which is all about fear-based junk. Frankly, I think you should throw your television out. That's just my personal
Interesting.
opinion.
And it wasn't always like that, but it's turning that way now. And for those who may not be familiar, TikTok has a feature where you can go live. So anybody that comes across, your account can watch you talk live.
Mhm.
A lot of people leave little comments, and the person who's live can respond to them. You can bring
Yeah,
people in to talk with you if you like, and you can learn the particulars of that. But it's a very versatile platform.
yeah.
Another platform that you are on and this is kind of like my social media home is Twitter. And
Yeah.
you are also at Shaman Isis on Twitter. Now, I think most people are familiar with the basic concept of Twitter. It's often described as a micro blogging platform, which it is. But there's a new feature called Twitter Spaces, and I say newer relative to the history of Twitter. What an audio space is, it's very similar to Clubhouse. LinkedIn has a feature now, they call them events, but essentially what they are little spaces where you can have a speaker talk to a group of people, and it's audio only. You don't have to show your face. You can have a co-host. Different platforms are set up differently, but you essentially have some form of having a co-host. You can have people come up as guest speakers, and here again, you can have any number of a very large listening audience
Mm-hmm.
on there. Social audio has worked well for you. You want to talk a little bit about what that's the term now, social audio, whether you're on Twitter
Yeah.
Spaces or Clubhouse or LinkedIn events or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's one called Wisdom. There's a number
Oh
of
yeah, I'm
others.
on Wisdom.
Yeah.
I'm on Wisdom. I do LinkedIn live events. I basically cover the gamut because I happen to like social audio. I'm a huge fan of Twitter because I like the way the platform is laid out, and I like Twitter Spaces because of the number of hosts and speakers that you can have. As a shaman and a healer who helps, and I want to be clear with people that a healer's job is to help people heal themselves. It's not about waving a magic wand over somebody and saying, "You're healed."
Yeah.
People do have a misconception about that. And I happen to like Twitter Spaces because, and things like that, social audio like that, because as an intuitive empath, that can tell when people are being honest. I can tell when people are revealing their true emotions. I can sense so much that allows me to adjust my energy to help another person. And so I really love the spaces for that because it allows you to have a reciprocal exchange of energy that's very important to anyone who works in the healing field and shamanism. And you get to have great co-hosts and have lots of people chatting and laughter, and it's a lot of fun. I've started doing a Friday night Twitter space called Healing Matters, where we just talk honestly. And I think that's the other part too, is, you can really be blunt and honest on platforms like that, where there's just not a lot of places where you're allowed to really, really speak your mind out loud and other people applaud you for being your sincere and honest and true self, which I think we need more of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Once again, you can find her on Twitter at Shaman Isis. Your website is shamanisis.com, and I would presume there's ways to find you no matter where you are online through your website.
Yes.
You have a podcast, New Earth News with Shaman Isis. Is that correct?
Yes,
Did I say that correctly? All right,
you did
very
good,
good.
Billy.
And once again, the book here is Unleash the Empress. And where can people find the book?
They can find it. It's actually linked on my website and in my social media, and you can also find it on Amazon and Kindle. And that book, just for people to know, it shares my personal journey through trauma, along with the steps that I took to actually finally learn to love life. So it's it's a quick recipe for how to get and into mind, body, and soul harmony and live your life joyfully.
Yes, mind, body, and soul. That is such a important thing, to have all those things working. We talk about moods, and happiness can be getting a birthday cake, but it's not having that stability as a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's something that you don't learn overnight, right? You have to
No.
work at it. A lot of times people think that there's going to be a magic bullet. I go to this seminar and I'm going to feel better, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's a process.
Getting to consciousness, which is really the goal of any of that type of work. It's the goal that I aim for with my clients. That allows you to be the director, the star, the producer of your own life, and that's one hell of a way to live.
It is. It's fantastic. Such an important message. I'm going to ask you. A lot of people these days, there's a lot of struggles out there. There's a lot of division in our society. And, if you go down that rabbit hole and reading everything and following all the conspiracy theories and on and on and on, there's a lot to be discouraged about, and people can find things to be discouraged about. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So what would be your message of hope? What's that light that you should hold up and keep all the distractions aside? What would be your message of hope for people to do that?
I'd start by saying the content, be very careful of the content you consume because it feeds into whatever energy you're in. I would say that, no matter what you've done, no matter the mistakes you've made, no matter the abuse you've endured, the trauma that has happened to you, the number of times you've fallen down, the amount of weight you've put on, how much you drank, the number of times you were arrested, at any time, you can literally make a decision that you want to live a life where you do not live in shame, you do not live in guilt, and you do not live in misery anymore. You can literally make that decision because the only person who can change your life is you. It just takes you making that decision and starting to take steps to change the practices that you have in your life, the habits and the patterns that you have. You can completely change your life. Because 3 years ago, I was over 80 pounds overweight. I was miserable. I hadn't looked at myself in the mirror in almost 10 years because I was so ashamed of the mistakes that I had made and some of the things that had happened to me. And I woke up one day and realized, you know what, girl, no one's going to get you out of this but yourself. And you can do that same exact thing for yourself. And these days, I'm very excited about life. And so can you. You can be very excited about your life again. I promise you. It's not nearly as hard as it seems. You just have to start by making that choice.
Awesome message. How uplifting is that? What else do you need? Shaman Isis is who we are talking to. The author of the book Unleash the Empress. You can find find her central hub point at her website, which is shamanisis.com. And of course, TikTok at Shaman Isis and Twitter at Shaman Isis. Thank you so much for coming on the program today. I really enjoyed listening to your message, and I really like the idea. It's just what you make it, like so many other things in life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Billy. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. And you can find me on Twitter too, if you care to, and I hope you do. You can find me at Billy Dees, and you can follow me, tweet me. As I always tell people, you just have to be nice. It's okay to agree to disagree, but be nice online. Treat people with respect, not just me, but anybody. That's what it's all about. Just be kind. It's a very simple message. Billy Dees is kind of like my screen name for all my social media platforms. I don't change it up too much. Maybe the Billy Dees Podcast, that's about it. Otherwise, it's a real easy name that I keep very consistent. You can find the podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. Thank you so much for listening to our program today with Shaman Isis, and I will talk to you again next week. I'm Billy Dees and host of the self-titled podcast, The Billy Dees Podcast. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast featuring authors and creators talking about their craft, advocates for community issues, and myself and an array of co-hosts discussing current events. There's no partisan ranting and raving going on here, just great content. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast on your favorite platform and on Twitter at Billy Dees. Thank you, and I hope you listen in.